Hey guys, welcome back to Explainer X. Today, I am going to recap a 1992 romance drama movie, named The Lover. So, let's begin. Movie starts from Jane. She starts telling us the story of her childhood. When she was just 15 years old, Jane attended a school in Saigon. It's holidays now, so Jane comes back to her house in Sadak. Sadak is a very small village. There, Jane's mother runs a school for young children. Jane has two brothers. Elder brother Per is very violent. He always harasses Jane and his younger brother Pablo. Per always smokes, stealing money from the house, and he does not do any work. Jane's younger brother Pablo is very timid. Pablo always cries because of Per's troubles, and in such a situation, only Jane supports him. Jane's mother knows about Per's smoking and stealing money, but she still does nothing, because Jane's mother loves Per the most among the three children, and Jane doesn't like this thing at all. After the holidays are over, Jane returns to Saigon for school. Just Jane's mother comes to drop her off. After a while, the bus comes to the river crossing for bridge, and on the same bridge the car of a rich house comes. There is Tony in him. Tony's eyes fall on Jane. Jane finds him very attractive because in those days no girl used to wear boys' headphones. The whole Tony seems to be talking to Jane very awkwardly, but Jane is not much interested in Tony. Tony hails from a wealthy Chinese family. Right now he was going home after completing his studies from Paris. His house is also on the side of Saigon, so Tony offers to drop Jane in his car to his hostel, and Jane agrees for him in the car. Now both start talking freely. Jane lies to Tony that she is only 17 years old and Tony is just 32 years old. Then he starts telling Jane about his business, talking about things. Tony slowly starts getting closer to Jane. Jane also knew this, but for the first time someone was in love with Jane and was getting close to him, so Jane also starts liking it all. In the meantime, Jane's hostel comes and she's saying goodbye to Tony and leave from there. In the hostel, Jane also tells her friend about Tony. The next day, as Jane starts going to school, she notices Tony's car near the school. Tony was very much in love with Jane, so today he came to see her. Jane comes near Tony's car and after kissing on his window goes back to school. That means Jane also fell in love with Tony. After school, Jane looks for Tony, but Tony is no longer there. The next day is a school holiday. Jane was dancing in the hostel with her friend. Tony comes under the boarding house. On knowing this, Jane goes to Tony. Tony brings Jane to the room. He calls it the bachelor room. The bachelor room is so that Chinese people can have fun with the girls there. Soon Jane knows it all. Tony was scared to love Jane because Jane is underage and there is a lot of age difference between them. So Tony was ready to leave Jane back, but Jane was prepared for what was to come. Then Tony takes off all of Jane's clothes and they both get intimate. After that, Jane starts telling about herself to Tony. Jane is very good at studies. He wanted to go ahead and become a writer. Then she starts telling how much problem is going on in the family due to money. Tony also came to know about Jane's family from his driver that Jane's elder brother Per smokes a lot after Jane's father passed away, so many problems started coming to his family. After hearing all this, Tony feels that Jane must have come to him only for money. At first Jane refuses him, but the truth is exactly this. Then they both get intimate again. Lives in bachelor room for whole day. At night, Tony brings Jane to a hotel. On there, Tony clearly tells that they cannot get married in the future because Tony is a Chinese and he can only get married to a Chinese girl. Hearing this, Jane happily says that she also does not like Chinese boys. Then in the hostel we see Jane sad. She probably did not like the talk of marriage, seeing that Jane is also really in love with Tony. The next day after school, Tony's driver comes to pick up Jane. The driver drops Jane back to the bachelor room. There they both get intimate again. Now it goes on like this for a few days. Means Jane always comes to bachelor room after school and but they both have fun. Seeing that Jane also likes all this, then one day Jane comes back to Sadak in Tony's car. Seeing the car coming, Jane's mother suspects Jane, and a telegram also came from the hostel because she was not there for 2 nights and days in the hostel. Then Jane starts telling them about Tony and their rich family. She does not tell anyone about the affair. Then Tony takes Jane's family for dinner at the hotel. There Tony starts telling them all about his family, but no one there had any interest in Tony's words. He is busy eating from everyone because he had not eaten such good food for many years. Soon Tony also knows this. Actually, Jane's family wants to use Tony so that all the debts of Jane's family can be erased with Tony's money. Then Tony and Jane return to the bachelor room. First of all, they are intimate. Then Jane asks for some money to give to her mother, and Tony gives her the money. Now there was no need for love here. Tony needed Jane and Jane needed Tony's money. Then the next day Jane's mother comes to the hostel to give money. All the girls in the hostel had come to know about Jane's affair. That's why all the girls start staying away from Jane. But it doesn't make any difference to Jane. Jane is going to France for next year's studies. After learning this, Tony gives his mother's locket to Jane as a memory. Tony was now in love with Jane very much, so Tony goes to his father to ask him to marry Jane. But his father tells him clearly he would prefer to see Tony dead than to marry Jane. In those days, getting a Chinese boy married to a French girl was considered very bad. That's why Tony's dad refuses him. This tells everything to Tony Jane as well. If Tony runs away from Jane and marries, then Tony will not get anything in his property. After hearing that Jane lies that she does not love Tony more, then both of them are in the bachelor room. There Tony was telling Jane about his future wife, and he was very sad to tell this because after marriage he will have to leave Jane. The next day Jane backs Sadik from Tony's car, but Jane's evil eye falls on Tony's ring and Tony has to give it to the ring even if he does not want to. On their pair suspected that Jane had slept with Tony, so there was a fight between them. Next day Pear is sent to another country for a job. Jane's mother feels a little bad because of this. But because of Pear, Jane and Pablo were very happy, as they were waiting for this time for many years. Then Jane goes to the bachelor room, where Tony's condition had worsened because he is going to get married on Friday. So Jane promises him that even after marriage, they will definitely meet each other once in the last. Then we are shown Tony's marriage, but Jane was also looking at Tony from afar. In Sadik, Jane's entire family starts preparing to go to France. Here we learn that it is because of Tony's help that Jane's entire family is able to go to France. Before going to France, Jane come to meet Tony's in bachelor room, but even after waiting there for a whole day, Tony does not come there. So Jane sadly leaves from the river. The next day Jane's entire family starts going to France by boat. Jane looks at Tony's car at the dock. She understands that Tony had come to say goodbye to her last. Jane, looking at the car, leaves from the flow. Then listening to a music in the boat at night, Jane starts crying in memory of Tony. Then after many years, Jane is a successful writer. Then one day he gets a call from Tony and he says that even after marriage, he was in love with her and will continue to do so till his death. And